Greetings. Thought it's time I made another live video after taking a few days off with decorating. You probably see the wall behind is now a different colour. It's an ongoing process, quite therapeutic. Today the orbital sander decided to pack up. Now that could be seen as a bit of a nuisance. The irony is I found a perfect piece of wood. I thought, good, I've not got to do any cutting, just shape the edges and take the paint off. It's the layer of varnish which is at the bottom which is proving the most stubborn, and so the sander packing up. Hi Kim, hi Alison. The idea of the sander packing up seemed a bit of a nuisance, but with this electric sander going, I can't think about anything. It's just a noise. But by doing it by hand with abrasive sandpaper, gave me chance to think about things. I mean, you may hear some bangs. For the benefit of those that are not familiar with the sort of celebrations in the UK, we're on now the 3rd of November. 5th of November is this Guy Fawkes night, where traditionally children take a stuffed doll in a wheelbarrow or something round doing penny for the guy. And it's a celebration of a failed gun plot on Parliament. So this day and age, people go out and spend, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 pounds on a box of fireworks, and then have lots of bangs that last a matter of seconds, a few coloured lights in the sky. So for the rest of us, it sounds like we're on part of a battlefield in the First World War, which I think is partly the psychological and the subconscious thinking behind all this fireworks anyway. What about all the, I've mentioned this before, what about all the other life, the trees, the plants, the animals, the birds and insects? Because there has been a case where a plant has been used with a polygraphic test for a conviction of a murder. It has been proven if you put a flame near a plant, it reacts to it because it feels a fear of being burned in some form or another, not the same as humans. So yeah, I've been watching some interesting YouTube videos. Jordan Maxwell, very well worth listening to, his latest one, talking, and I would seriously recommend everybody gets familiar with maritime law. And I'll come back to that later because that's a huge point. Yeah, 4th of July, New Year's, yeah. And it's, if you notice, since the millennium, year 2000 celebrations, how these fireworks have increased. I don't know what the statistics are like with the sparklers and children getting maimed or badly burned, but I should imagine that still continues year in, year out. And the stupidity of people is incredible. Not to mention the amount of money they're putting into the system and keeping all this going. It's absolute madness. Another thing I listened to last night, there seems to be a very, and something I've mentioned before, now I did listen to Nathan, somebody I think his name is, 1980. We're absolutely pulled apart. This guy who sort of allegedly sort of came on to debunk the flat earth debate, and they tore into him and he did look rather stupid, and all he could do really was laugh. But it got me thinking beyond that, because it's probably even before going to school, let the ball go. And I don't just mean talking about shape of the earth. That actually in itself is quite irrelevant. but it's a very true analogy. Let go of all these fake, stupid belief systems and everything. Yeah, you can argue the Earth is flat, but I mean, it's got mountains. It's got well, we're told there's deep ravines and gouges at the bottom of the ocean, so it's hardly exactly flat. Whether it's circular, well, we can't actually go there and have a look and check for ourselves anyway. So it becomes a bit of a meaningless debate. As far as I'm concerned, it's an open and shut case on that one. But it leads on to other things. It's like, well, if they can lie about that, what else are they lying to? And I couldn't help but think back to. Now, let's need to run with this one to start with. Now, this is purely in the three-dimensional. We're talking about this at the moment. Now, there is a positive outcome to all of this, and I will get to that, but I need to go through these steps first. So let's go with this idea of this civilization, this utopia called Tartaria. Not very far back in the past, and the past has been changed. It is one ongoing war, not standalone events like the Napoleonic War, the 30 Days War, and so on. First World War, Second World War, Vietnam War. They are theatres, the evening entertainment, that actually break the blocks of the buildings of this. Now I'm just going to wait for the connection to come back. Right, connections come back, hopefully. So, yeah, so this whole thing with Tartaria, think of it as these wars just being an ongoing destruction of the architecture that is too big to get rid of. And then you look into all the fairs, and because there's plenty to find on that. I will put a link to a very good channel called The Blue, whose link, and I have seen it before, and it is worth seeing because it does make sense. But so we go back to Tartaria. I wonder, was there the equivalent of truth seekers back then, those that were starting to wake up to, look, we're being played here, something seriously wrong? Because something else I listened to last night, I couldn't sleep, so I got up again and I listened to one of Max Higgins talking about the realities, and probably the biggest threat is this solar minimum and flash ice, going by the idea of mammoths being flash frozen. They've still got food in their mouths. They've not even finished chewing it. So whatever happens fairly quick. And then you've got all these other scenarios. I mean, really, the one to look at is the United Nations Agenda 21. It's all about putting people into cities, because you've got everybody then confined in small areas. Going that this solar minimum, this grand solar minimum happens on a at regular intervals, and there are those that have the knowledge of this. Now, they don't, as Leon Flat Earth British said, they were put here to serve us. And I have said it is what they are serving us is absolute rubbish, and it's not acceptable. So I think what the plan is with this UN Agenda 21 is to get people into cities, and then it's a case of basically playing like Skittles, and it's a numbers game, because it's the certificates, the birth certificates in the Vatican and the Swiss banks. Your value, you'll just be written off because the herd has got too big. They do need a certain number, clearly. But then when this energy food source gets too big and it looks like they're starting to lose control, they have to cull the numbers. And this seems to happen over and over again. And when you think about it, you have these innate senses. Well, innate, eight is a loop. It's loopy. We're going round and round and round in circles. So I'm thinking now about the future. I don't know. Did anything happen with Seattle today, 3rd of November? Has it happened yet? Hi, Percy. Hi, I am human. Um, Alison Marie. Hi, Kim. Hi. Ah, what's your name? Dave, isn't it? Black Sheep Researcher. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. I can see it almost in my mind, but names are just labels anyway. Um, yeah, so this is a win-win situation, whatever. If you look at this in the real long term, right? There's one event, one inevitability in this 3D that there is no escaping around it, and that is death. Right? Now, here's the big trick. Now, before I get to that, let me just something else that's come into my mind. I watched, and it's very true. Quantum of Conscience spoke of that song. Joe, who play, I think it's Joe plays the violin, and the devil comes along, finds this guy, and says, "I challenge you and wager your soul that I can play the violin better than you." And the guy says, "Look, I'm the best violin player there's ever been. You're not going to beat me." Um, and the wager is the soul against this golden violin. And you just look at the third. I've always said, look for the third hidden player. The devil's playing two sides here, as Matt rightly pointed out, because you're giving into the seven deadly sins. You're giving into the ego. I'm the best at this. You've got this gold violin, which you're sold out for a material gain. You've been had. Either way, you've been had. The trick is to not take part in this shit. Right. Some of you are going through an awakening experience. A lot are not, right? There's one inevitability, no matter whether you are or not, you're going to die. All right. We're all going to die. And look at it, it's doing us a favor. If you look at life in general, from the insects and things upwards, generally the bigger things get, the longer they live. We're capping out sort of 80 to 120 years where our bodies are expired one way or another. So we're shortchanged on the one hand, but it's doing us a favour, because do you really want to go through 1,000 years of this rubbish? So it's a win. To die is to live, because you break out this cycle. But the thing is you then come back in this cycle. But here's the other part of it, right? It could be that we're going through this awakening experience and a lot of us are going to die. We're not going to make it. But let me explain this. Because the way this system is going with this Agenda 21, if you're not going to be part of this system, you're going to be cast out anyway. And you're going to be outside the castle walls, as it were. It's sort of like Game of Thrones. You're going to be beyond that ice wall. You'll be shunned from society. You won't be able to get credit. You won't be able to have any interaction with people in smart cities, for example. They will be totally controlled, and you're either in it or you're out of it. And this is a case, you don't have to be in it to win it. You can be out of it to win it. Anastasia, hi. Yeah, so think of it this way. The main part of us is the soul, which is the eternal, the immortal part. Now, if we're going through these experiences, and the heart is a brain that holds all the memories, that is part of the soul and the spirit. What you gain in this life, even going through the awakening, even if you don't make it, I mean, it is a solar minimum, and it is like an instant freeze, and you're frozen to death. Well, your soul isn't frozen to death. That is, I mean, if you look at ice and water, it's always blue and white. What about the blue flame? Ice burns, right? Blue and white is divine feminine. That is going over, I would say, to divine feminine. So maybe those that are going through this awakening, some of it is a further long-term goal of next time round, you've got this information in your soul memory, which you will use, and then you will come out of it the next time round. Because what's to say everybody's going to get out this time anyway? That's one aspect of it. And see, it's a win-win. The trick, and this is the critical word, and we're going to break this one down. You've got try and a cross. Look at the dark side. You have a triangle, a triangel. You're on trial under this Black's law all the time. So it's a tri and it's crossed. It's an unholy trinity. The devil is playing more than one side, but we can play more than one side as well. There's two definite ways of going about this. One is within the law and stalling this plan and playing in the system. The other way is the spirit of 1776, where it's basically, F you, we're not paying you any bloody money. We're not playing your stupid game anymore. We are claiming our right and our sovereign divinity over ourselves. Nobody owns us. All this crap about the Vatican and birth certificates. Well, by going along with that and then saying, I'm going to produce a certificate of a live birth, you're still playing in the system. Well, this again, I'm not saying break the law or not break the law. If you go out and break the law and you hurt or harm something else or somebody else, well, you deserve to be locked up. Fuck you, basically, because you've picked on somebody else vulnerable. You're not helping other people. You're self-serving by doing that. So may the law come down on you. But if you're not paying your taxes and things and not paying into this system and not doing what this system wants, what's wrong with that? Because that's exactly what this American independence, and I'm going with the official narrative on this, on what we're told of what it was all about. It was divorcing itself from King George and the taxes that were being demanded from Great Britain on this new 13 colonies, which is where you get your stripes. And yeah, again, another stupid, ridiculous thing. And the 4th of July, there's connotations to that, to do with that, with astrology and things as well. But I would seriously recommend go and listen to the latest Jordan Maxwell. It makes it clear that in Black's law, a human being, by definition, is a sea monster. And we have no rights. We can't own anything. Because you don't. You come into this world with nothing, you go out with nothing. It's a rigged game that you're never going to win if you play by their rules. So the crux is going to come. A lot of you have probably got elderly relatives. So let's see who's going to put the courage of their convictions with this one. When the time comes and it comes to the death of one of your relatives, are you going to inform anybody of the death and fill in a death certificate? Are you going to write them off the books, or are you going to give somebody in the Vatican a headache because they can't balance the books? Every little helps with this destruction of this monetary system. I know what I'm doing, because it's not murder. You're just not playing their bloody rules, and you're not informing this system of who's here and who isn't, because they deal in legal fictions anyway that are assigned to you. They're not you. So that's another thing. Don't admit and don't take ownership of that legal fiction over you, because it isn't you. You're giving them power over you the moment you do that. So you can, the only way we're going to break this is to break the law, because the law is a wall. It's to contain us. You can forget about all the things like 5G. Yeah, there's a serious side to that. The shootings, some are fake, some are real. There's going to be deaths in it anyway, because it's a brilliant way of culling the population and growing this fear energy. But it's all theatre. The whole lot of it is theatre. The best thing to do is to unplug from the whole lot, disengage from it. Could say you're almost taking a selfish attitude of, but if you don't look after the self, who else is? Because I ain't got a FEMA camp. I can't host thousands of people. And I'm quite happy to give a hand up. We all should. But why should we carry anybody else? Everybody has an equal chance of breaking out of this. allegedly, which is the other thing, this Darwin's theory of evolution. I think there is something in that. Now, going with the whole concept of, when you look at the old buildings, these Tatarian buildings, these giant doors, and everything seems to point that everything was much bigger, greater levels of oxygen, therefore everything is bigger. And with an increase in size is an increase in lifespan. So by shrinking us down, they're shrinking our lifespans, they're taking away from us in every possible way. They're feeding off our energy. We are dealing with parasites. There is an AI program which is in this, which is just throwing things at this. It's part of the program to set up the scenarios and things, and then we decide on what part in this stage we want in this theatre. Well, they're all actors and actresses at the end of the day. You choose whether you want to be in the back scene or you want to take a centre stage starring role, be a star. Because everything is pretty much inside out. This whole nonsense about space. Well, where is all the focus on what is below? Where is all the focus on the Antarctic? Oh yeah, there is now with InfoWars, of course. But it would make sense in a free and fair world. You would look to the Antarctic and you would look below ground for solutions. But obviously, all these problems are all engineered anyway. That is quite clear. I don't care who believes me or who doesn't believe me. I mean, you just look at the supposed history we've got, and you look at things like the plague and the Great Fire of London, all very vague or very specific. In the case of the Great Fire of London, it was a bakery in Pudding Lane, and that's what started the fire. And it's funny how they can pinpoint it right down to that. Maybe they had fire experts in those days. Maybe they could be of use in California today. LiDARs, indeed. They're firing bloody lasers and exciting things that are being set off underground as it is. But it's all part of the theatre to see what they can get away with. But you have to start asking the question. I mean, how much longer are we going to be put up with being this theft? I mean, was it NASA spends every day 70 million? Well, where's that money coming from? It's your bloody taxes it's coming out of. I don't pay tax apart from on things I buy. But I'm trying my best to grow as much as I can. There is also, as Max Egan has pointed out, this push on veganism, and you do have to wonder about that. And although I've gone down the vegan route most of the time, not totally. That's not to say that I eat meat, but I think I have become intolerant to meat. But well, if we have this apocalyptic scenario of a solar minimum, well, I'm going to. I mean, let's face it. Even if you have 80 years, you have 80 years. How long does death actually take? I know there can be horrific slow ones and there can be very quick ones, but you only get one shot at that anyway. So is it really anything to have a fear of? Because once you get the idea that we have this hologram and sort of matrix, and I would say it is very much like the Matrix, and without a point of reference, you could all well be in an egg with wires attached to you and pipes attached to you, and you'd be none the wiser, and you'd just be a battery, like in the catacombs. I think with a lot of people, it would be you've got less cognitive dissonance in the catacombs than you have with a lot of these clones out there. But they seem happy in their misery, so leave them to it. Why prolong their agony? They're doing that for themselves. This is the thing. When it comes right down to it, let me just catch up with these comments. Exactly, Anastasia. I've got memories of things that I shouldn't have memories of. You could say I've It's imaginations. Some skeptical person would. You could say, "Oh, you've read it and it's fused in your mind," or whatever. That's down to the individual. You know if it feels real or if it's of your own imagination, and there are going to be people who just want to do it for attention. There's always going to be those that will sell out even on the path. They're the more annoying ones in a way, because it's like, well, how come they can see this bit and then not realise they're being played by another bit? One of the big ones has been that flat Earth thing, and this. I've seen some of the comments and things. Oh, what's happened here? Can't install updates. Well, we don't want updates installing in the middle of a live feed. What a stupid thing. It's like these adverts. They now decide to put them part way through, so it cuts right through a piece of music. It's like, well, that's just going to get my back up. Ah, well, I assume this is still working. Yeah, this ownership. This is the thing. We are vessels within a vessel. We don't want it to be a starship, an enterprise. Um, Something else on one of the YouTube videos I watched, like when you get to old age, and if you're still puzzling about the meaning of life and pondering the question of what is successful, if you're basing it on monetary terms, then you've really not, you've just wasted all those years. But if you cannot see outside of that, I've got an old, spin this round. Should be able to see it. I've got an old dresser, originally pine. It was my grandmother's, but there's a brilliant example of letting go. If it comes to a solar minimum and it is a case of setting fire to that to keep warm so it survives the day, or holding on to the sentimental value, which is going to serve me better. It is all about letting go. And that's going to include loved ones, because it seems to be very much that we're all the odd one out in our sort of family circles and things. And the reasons for that, who knows? There's so many things like fluoride in the water, the nanotechnology, all the talk of the chemtrails. But as I've said before, the whole chemtrail thing may actually be, there's two ways of looking at this. If there is going to be a grand solar minimum, this is perhaps blocking out the sun to bring it on quicker, to try and change events. There's also the stories of the Anunnaki and repairing their atmosphere. Well, if they're using the gold for something else, or a lot of it has gone somewhere else and been used in some way that is being kept from the rest of humanity, then they're going to use lesser metals and try and replicate that. They don't throw anything away. The whole idea that this great library of Alexandria caught fire and that all that knowledge was lost, they need that knowledge to base the lies on, because they are lacking in any imagination or ability to create in any form. That is where we score. We have enormous power, the power of imagination, for example, and things are created from thought. There is, as I said earlier, there is a frequency with other living beings, plants. It's this spider plant is getting my attention at the moment. Sorry, not a spider plant, it's an aloe vera, which has brilliant healing properties. And they are friends, these plants on the windowsill. I wouldn't be without them. But there's only so much I can do in this physical world. And they also have a lifespan as well. The cactus is, 43 years old. Still never flowered. Repotted it earlier this year, see if it makes a difference. But it's an energy, it's a life form, and I definitely do feel it. There is definitely a validation. The shining ones, yes, it is a dream frame. As what I've suggested before, that with no point of reference, what is the dream and what is the reality? Are the dreams the genuine reality, and this is just the nightmare? Because there is an overlay over whatever this is, whether this is real in some form. This gets very what's the word? Not theological. I can't think of the word now. Philosophical, maybe. And let's just get rid of this thing off the screen because this is annoying me. It can't install updates, so we don't want the updates. A load of crap anyway. Yeah, it's an interesting, the different realities that we have. And we do seem to be just going around in this endless loop, and it's like one layer upon another layer upon another layer, because lies rely on being you tell a lie, you have to tell another one, and then it's layer upon layer. Well, just look at Tataria and all this. Look at channels like New Earth with Sylvie, I can't think what her last name is, brilliant. And that's looking at showing the evidence comparative around the world of things are not what history is telling us. Then you look at Wise Up channel, and he will show you that, well, basically nothing ever changes. Nothing changes at all. But there is a Darwin evolution basis. It's the brains. It's not the physical appearance that's changing. It's the brains. Those that are going down this spiritual path and this truth-seeking path, I'm sure you can all see the difference in the way we are thinking to the way the rest of the world, the larger number, are thinking. And even when you point out and show evidence of things, it's just not registering. And they do seem almost like well, it would be easier to teach a chimpanzee, I'm sure of it. And it's a very worrying trend. It ties in with this frontal temporal dementia that seems to be a pandemic. The reflection, that's reminded me. There's something I thought of earlier. That what's happened here? Oh, it's that silly settings that can go. That's a bit of a delayed thing. Pressed it ages ago. Yeah, this reflecting, it's shining. Well, this is how I saw it earlier. It's when you've got the caduceus, the two serpents, and they are facing each other. And their energies, when you harness both, you acknowledge the good and the bad. So that includes accepting death. Because once you get over this whole concept of a 3D reality and start seeing that we have immortal souls, this is just an experience. That whole concept of death then loses any fear energy to it. It's a doorway. It leads on to somewhere else. Dia, deity, and th, where we get theology, God. It's a way to source, perhaps. It's nothing to fear at all. It's something, well, we can buy into all these media stories into this stupid theatre show, this puppetry, this mimicry. But clearly, it's money that is the mechanism that they are using. And let's face it, there are a lot of people who are a week away in their wages or their paycheck from being homeless. There are a lot who will see a short-term gain of accepting that golden violin. But they won't, as Matt said, they didn't wager against the devil taking the soul. They, as he put it, if he had wagered something benevolent, like, well, if I win this competition, then you'll find a cure for child cancer. See, that wasn't it was like, I'm going to sell out for the material thing. And there's a lot of people, unfortunately, who will do that because they're not seeing beyond the 3D. They are still falling for all the various actors and actresses, and they do come in many forms. They, in some ways, you could say they are good actors, because if you think they are politicians or priests or scientists, they've got you fooled. They're playing the part quite well. I mean, Neil deGrasse Tyson is a bloody actor. Brian Cox is as his name suggests, and it's just a pretty face, and will have slightly longer hair than the eccentric, what's his name? Einstein, mad professor with the white hair everywhere, the sort of Beethoven sort of look as well. You can't really put a young girl, an AI, a Greta, into science, because the rebuttal can be, oh, she's only a girl, she doesn't know what she's talking about. But you can play the heartstrings by using that model in the environmental issue. And we've got to combat this climate change, this ambiguous, well, the climate changes all the time. That's maybe because they've messed about with it. It doesn't make any sense, any of these weather patterns or what's happening. It's a Pandora's box that's been opened, which is why I've suggested we use our energy to calm it down, to just be a thorn in their side, basically. Throw the energy back, reflect it back. So yeah, this Carduceus, when you embrace both the sides and they're making eye-to-eye contact, these two Caduceus, they're doing this at each other. You are at the center point of it, because you can then choose which of those two to listen to, and you make informed decisions for yourself, because at the end of the day, that is all you are answerable to in greater, and a source, which I do believe there is. Everything seems to follow the geometric, and then it obviously leads on to the question, what created that, and so on, and we're back on that one again. Don't worry about whether it's where the edge is. Get rid of this other vial out of the way, then maybe we'll get the answers to that. I mean, where is the sun really coming from? I've suggested it's a back projection coming up onto whatever you want to call it, a dome, like a bit like a baby's mobile, where everything goes round on the ceiling. So it could actually be coming from below us, not above us. Lightning starts by coming up from the ground, and then you see the blue flash, see that part of the spectrum where it comes down, because it happens so quick. But it comes up first. So maybe the sun, whatever it is just a reflection. I mean, let's face it, light and this spiritual path is all about reflecting. It's reflecting out, and this is where we've got these two Caduceus looking eye to eye. You can push out like a light beam, or even a sound beam, an energy beam of some kind that's not quite in this reality. And it will metaphorically shine a light on the darkness. Shills. Well, controllers, that was it. I think that was Martin Liedtke. But the ones that are running the show it's a con. and they are trolling us. That's why they are controllers. it's just that they change the way things sound. I was thinking as well, something Jordan Maxwell said about Christos being congealed oil, and the correct pronunciation of Lord is lard. Well, thinking about that in military terms, they say, or in the sort of royalty etiquette, it's milad, not my lord. And same as ça instead of sir, because it refers to a French royalty term with the initials being SAR. But it's also then changed again by taking or putting energy into it and becoming a serf instead of a sir. A servant I remain, so you become a serf. This is what is always portrayed of Russia, this serf class of people. Well, maybe they are the downtrodden, what was Tataria, because the architecture all seems to point to this. And there's another very good thing. We've got this veil. It's a metaphorical veil as much as anything else. So when I want to cut a film, I use a knife or a razor. What about an Ockham's razor? Because Wise Up Channel has shown that what you are seeing when you're looking at these fantastical stone blocks, a lot of them are cast concrete, and it's the rebar impression that is left, the imprint of thousands of years ago in these ancient civilizations. It's the same with the underground cities. They weren't carved out with copper chisels from above working down. They've just been buried and the mud has turned into rock. That's the most simple, obvious answer with all of this. It's not even worth getting into a debate over. Once you see it, you see it. All the thing, the line leaches out and things harden. And then some of the, and like on the Earth Channel was pointed out, some of these ancient stone blocks don't look that ancient. They look quite new in comparison. Then when you look at the some of these structures and things, they look old even in the times of the photos. And then there's the whole question of photography. I've suggested that when you look at some of these almost aerial views of cities, even somebody who's autistic who can draw a landscape from memory would need to go up in something like a balloon or an airship to actually see that, to then draw it. But the accuracy is such that it does seem to be some type of photography. And as Martin Leaker showed on his channel recently, these photographs from 1830, they're like high definitions. There's some photographic process that has been suppressed for definite. And looking into the early chemistry of photography, when they brought in like the sepia toned pictures that are always faded on the outside, it's quite a dangerous and horrendous affair to even produce one photograph. And you think, what a laborious task. But these earlier photos don't have any of this ghosting, because they're action scenes. They're not posed shots. You've got the smoke coming out of a steam locomotive and the wind is blowing it, and that is caught crystal clear in high definition. It is not blurred like when you get this ghosting effect where you've got people walking on some of the more recent and poorer quality photos, and you start thinking there's something very wrong here. Things are going backwards with the technology with this. And then it comes back to the question, if we are having these grand minimums, and this is a repeat pattern, well, this controlling force, which is distinct from the AI that is just throwing scenarios at things, they are just manipulating it by keeping the knowledge suppressed for their own benefit, and we're all paying for it. Then they probably have got underground bunkers, as has been suggested so many times. I mean, if this whole NASA thing is a hoax, what do they really spend all this money on? What you've got to account for this somewhere. There's so much talk. Hi, Lee. Doing sterling work in the northeast with the 5G. Just keep being a thorn in their side. That's fantastic. If we all keep chipping away, and I would say hats off to you if I was wearing a hat, but the sentiment is there. You're doing absolutely brilliant. Definitions. Hi, Roo. Yeah, it's this is the thing with photography. High definition. How far back does photography really go? What are we really seeing in some of these photos? Anybody can chalk up 1865 or 1830, but do we really know how old these photographs really are? Some of these lithographs are they're just too accurate to be artwork, I would say. They're too exact. That's just my personal thoughts on it. But seeing the pattern on the way things go, and this is what I try to focus on rather than going down rabbit holes, because one, they take up an awful lot of time. This is why I've not looked into the Seattle thing in any great detail, and I really don't know the answer to that. Hand on heart, I don't know if there's something going to happen. I've not really looked to see if anybody has posted anything up to say something's happened, or there's something still just about to happen. There's all sorts of speculation. There's been all cases brought forward to this, showing bits of old films and saying, look, that is showing in The Simpsons the famous tower falling over and being struck by a direct energy weapon. Well, maybe it will. I'm not there, so I don't know. That's but it's buying into the theatre of it all. Once you get past that illusion of death, I mean, well, if you're lasered to death with a direct energy weapon, it's going to be pretty instant anyway. It's all over in a flash, shall we say? So why worry about it? Because you've got out of this system. Because it's not very pleasant at the best of times anyway. Can't be all love and light about this. There is a darker reality, and it is when you face the fears, the darker realities, because there's a big difference between facing them and seeing them and understanding them and actually taking part and doing them. And is a very fine line as well. You've got to look carefully for things that might trigger you, because as soon as you start getting angry, you're feeding a negative energy even from that. The neutrality is the best place to be. Take a leaf out the financial banking side of things. Look at Switzerland. It's always been neutral. Make you wonder why, doesn't it? Well, we know why. It's because it handles all the criminal money. And it's pretty central to this whole system. That's why it's always kept neutral. So what's wrong with us staying neutral to it all? But even in staying neutral, if the laws don't suit you, as long as they're not harming anybody else, then why go along with them? They need you to confirm your identity anyway, and so they can attach this legal fiction to you. That is a power to take away from them. If you don't carry any ID on you, then they can ask you as many times as they want. But if you just tell them I am, what can they do? There's nothing further they can really do with you. That song, isn't it? Why worry about a thing? Because right. Ringity bells. you can almost see as well why some of these, leaving aside the whole, what they call it, the 27 Club with singers and musicians who meet untimely deaths one way or another, normally drug overdose or car accident. But some of the songs, what their messages they're putting out, and I don't think they're even consciously aware. I think they're spiritually remote writing. They're being channeled, and they are telling. It makes sense to me. I mean, things are put out in films. Why aren't they? Why not? And it does seem that they're put out in music as well. I do get things. I'll get a tune come into my head sometimes, and it's like there's a reason for that. So my even what I listen to at times is dictated to in a way by these spiritual downloads, because there will be a line in a song, or even potentially the architecture of the video where it's got the instrumental and the blank screen, and then words come up, and that can be very telling as well. It's not just the words and the sound. Look also at all the little details in these things. It's amazing what it's there to be harvested, all this knowledge, because this is mind food. So you are allowed to harvest. You're not actually killing anything. It grows something and more of awareness in oneself, and helps with a greater understanding of so much more to all of this. Oh, good grief. It's nearly an hour already. Doesn't time fly? Huh? The other thing, that was another thing. Jordan Maxwell mentioned the term attorney. Now, attorney goes back to someone who would turn things over to the king if he wanted somebody else's land and property and livestock or whatever they've got, all their possessions. I want that, I want that. And this was the guy that was appointed to turn them over. Well, if you take the serpent energy away, you've took the S away, you've got Saturn, who's become Aturn. And let's not forget that, as Jordan Maxwell pointed out, an attorney, first and foremost, works for the justice system, the just ice system. They're keeping us on ice with it. They're not, that again is another illusion. They're not there for your best interest. They're there to go through this theatre, this show of representing you. And when you appoint an attorney, you become a ward of court, which by legal definition means you are insane or an idiot, basically. Or not of sound mind. So the saying about if you hire an attorney or have a solicitor, and that's because the attorney is called a solicitor in the UK, because they're soliciting, they're selling them to put on an act and just twist words. And my client said this, my client was there, and it's already been discussed because you've accepted that legal identity that they've given you, that legal fiction. So they've got you. But why are we even taking part in any of that? Those laws are not there to serve us, they are to control us. So why are we even going along with them? So forget about paying some of these silly things that I can see coming up sometime in the future. We're not going to be a death informant either. I mean, an informant, think of that in terms of you're snitching on other people. You're telling to the other side, you're selling out short, basically. Oh, let them have a hissy fit in the Vatican if their books don't balance and they haven't got a balance of birth and death certificates. What a shame. Not my problem. Didn't ask for the system in the first place. I mean, if two people want to be together, they should be allowed to be together. End of story. You don't need permission from a bloody government. That's ridiculous. Who's in control of who? Who's an authority around here? Why am I even listening to them? To hell with them. This is the thing. We all need to have this attitude. Yeah, 3 times 9, 27 club. That's very true. Yeah. There's always these numbers with this lot. They ruin everything, every damn symbol, every colour. There's nothing they haven't polluted and tinged. There isn't. You can't pick one colour that they've not tampered with. So annoying. You're gonna have to come up with some real imagination to come up with something that they haven't twisted. But I think we don't even need any symbols as such. Just be ourselves. We are our own symbols. And be sovereign to ourselves. That is the thing. Don't fall for the trick of death, because that's only the physical body. Once that illusion is out the way, the fear has no energy left. It can't throw anything at you. It can threaten you with killing you. But if you have no fear of death, it's an empty threat, really. It's hollow and meaningless. It's like game, set, and match on that one. And there's nothing they can do. It's a win-win-win all the way. But I just like these people who will puzzle over things and then they'll ask you about them. But then when you give them an answer, they don't like the answer. Oh, that's a conspiracy. Well, all right, then you carry on buying back into that system. I was thinking earlier on about when I first started getting into some of this, and you do automatically start to wrap the new ideas around the old ideas, and then it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Let's leave all that to one side, start with a blank bit of paper and start again. Now we'll come at it totally fresh. And it does open up, because it is all about the letting go, as much as anything else. To gain, you have to lose. It's always a duality to this. And from a lot of you I've spoken to, you lose friends, you lose family, but balance it up with what you're gaining as well. Because even with this internet, you're finding other like-minded people. They might not live nearby, but this is very much beyond the 3D anyway. This goes way beyond into outside of this reality. So does it really, we could physically travel if we can unlock it where we can mentally travel, because you do it anyway if they're dreams. Some of you can control you. I think it's called lucid dreaming. Some of you can actually control the events. You've taken control of that situation. Now that's an interesting concept. If that is the awakened part, and this is the asleep part, because then clearly you've cracked being sovereign to yourself for at least some of the time. So that's something definitely worth exploring, I think. Yeah, they do. It is mongering, fear monger. I mean, you think it's still trying to sell you something, and it comes with a hook as well, generally with mongers. Made of iron to ionize us down. And I think the iron and the magnet aspect is another area definitely worth looking into. Think also of the term, if you're up before the judge, you're in courts. Not quartz crystals, but you're in a quartz which has a power. You can see where they've got the words from, how they've twisted them to mean the opposite. So there are ways out of this for definite. You just have to see beyond the fear of the death and think, okay, maybe this is one more step I have to go through. And then the next time round is when I break out of it. I mean, that's something to look forward to. So that is now turned into a positive. So there is no fear of death. You either break out of it this time or you break out of it next time. Because if you're any of this awakening, or truth seeking, you're on that path anyway. No matter what aspects you've got or don't get or don't understand, doesn't matter. It's sorting out, as Christine I was talking to earlier, what's relevant and what's irrelevant. And we only want the relevant parts, because relevant, think of that word, it's a revelation, it's a reveal. It shows us something. Oh, wonderful. Just catching up with the comments, sorry. Yeah, I have the memory of dreams, but I don't seem to dream. So I don't know what I do. I really don't. Ears gone up in the ringing, as I said that as well. It's rather interesting. They're all around me. Birds. That's fantastic if they are. That's something else I've noticed. This interaction with nature is changing. I mentioned this on a previous video about something maybe look up, and then there's a tomato plant in the tub and a really windy day, and it happened to be blowing directly from the south on this particular day. Otherwise, that wouldn't have gone over. It's fairly well sheltered from the westerly wind. But something alerted my attention. It's like, oh, the tomato plant's on its side. So I went out there. So there's a communication going on. I've noticed it with animals as well, particularly if you're out and about and there'll be somebody, you'll see somebody the other side of the road and they're walking the dog, and the dog is more likely going to notice, may start speaking to you, or they stare. That's another thing they do. Dogs will just stare, like they know there's something different. But maybe I'm sure they can see an energy. They may not be able to see in colour, or so we're told, but they're seeing in some sort of spectrum that is different from us. Yes, Anastasia, that's the conclusion I've come to, because some mornings I wake up and it's like, oh, what have I been doing? Physically feel absolutely battered. And it's like, well, whatever you've done in dream state, sleep state, we've not been resting. The soul or the spirit has still been doing something somewhere, for definite. But that's one nice area with my life. I don't have to set an alarm. I just wake up naturally. And I find at the moment I'm sleeping a lot more than I used to. There again, I've been doing a lot more physical activity with this decorating. But it's brought a nice tranquility. And I thought, with the blinds, rather than replace them, I want to paint them or spray them and then do the constellations on them. So I've got an instant, at a glance, view of what I can then maybe see outside. So it puts the blinds to a practical use. So I mean, I wouldn't even bother putting this blind down, but apparently it keeps the heat in. But it can have a practical use to it as well. Haven't quite worked out how to get the blinds to revolve yet. So I can have all 12 constellations going round. But that's just a joke. Battles in dreams. I'm glad I don't. Actually, I'm glad I don't dream for that reason. I do remember the concept and the experience of it, and the odd nightmare, but it's very vague now. But at least I can relate to it. I suppose that's something. It's funny, I'm forgetting I'm even sort of live. In some ways, that's like I can almost picture you all sort of sitting round. Um, I was talking to somebody earlier about this. It's the change of focus. You're not focusing on the screen. You're. This is why I shut my eyes a lot, because it's channeling. It's a different sight. Because all I can actually see is what I look like that you're seeing, but I don't really pay any attention to it. Um, it's all about the perception with this. So I did it partly because it's what am I fearful of? I want to get this message out. So we just muddle through as best we can. I can't do music on these things, or I think it's a screen sharing thing where I could pull stuff up and then show that instead of me. I've got no idea how to do any of that. But yeah, it's sometimes, particularly on Messenger, when it's the one-to-one communication, I'll get images come into my mind, or I'll get details about that person. I then relay to them, say you're this blood type, or you're wearing this particular type of clothing. It could be all manner of things. Like, how did they know? How did I know that? Well, it's just shown as a proof of this other reality aspect. This soul communication, I think, is the best way. Sorry, catching up with the comments again. Actually, this is a question or something I was mentioned the other day about facing fears. If you've got, there may be a very good reason why that is blanked out of your memory, and you have to ask yourself the question of, if you say, for example, go to a hypnotist and go through a regression to try and unlock those memories, are you going to benefit from them? Or are you just going to give yourself a whole load of fears to relive and unpleasant experiences to relive? I'm not saying there's a right or wrong to this, but it would definitely be a question that I would weigh up with anything like that, because you may be unlocking a Pandora's box, and it may be that those memories have been wiped from your memory banks for very good reason. So that's all I'll say on that, really. Oh, you don't want to be in London, horrible place. Oh, I don't know if it ever was a nice place in some ways. It seems very much at the centre of things. If you feel like I'm human, if you feel like you've lived in a castle at times, it's probably because you have. It's a soul memory coming through. I don't know. Maybe meditate. Something else may come to that from that. It seems to be, and it seems validated. But when you hear stories of organ donors and the recipients taking up a new hobby, and it turns out that the organ donor had an interest in that hobby, so it seems to imply that the organs, same with the Egyptian mummification process, those 7 jars with the organs, they're parts of the soul that contain memories of things. So I would say that's what's coming through. Something is triggering, and you did have a past life where you were in a castle. You may well have been some sort of royalty or something. Looking at all the Tartarian buildings, it looks like everybody lived in castles or palaces, because it doesn't seem much in the evidence of housing. It seems more colossal functional buildings. the indications seem to be that life was very different, even the concept of eating. I would say that they were probably some of their, or a good part of their food source would have been sunlight and air, and not actual physical food. But it's still going to be, it's going to be the reverse engineering. Certainly, I would think with these world fairs and exhibitions, the labels that apply to the buildings are an indication of what they had been previous. If it isn't money, energy, perhaps energy banks, because we're talking about a radically different civilization with a radically different way of doing things. So it probably didn't have hospitals in the sense that we have them today. They had probably something more like a healing center than a hospital. A lot of it would depend on what activities were done before, and if you needed surgery, like building construction. If a block fell on you and tore your leg half open or something, for example, you'd still need some sort of surgery if that was how things were going. But who knows? I'm only speculating on this, but it's a fascinating side to it. And whilst there's a saying about you shouldn't dwell on the past, it's past is made up of experiences. And if we don't learn from the experiences, then how can we prepare ourselves for what is to come? But especially when it seems to be a recurring theme. And I'm going back to that grand solar minimum again. Everything else seems to be a distraction away from that. Everything is pushed in the opposite. Everything is always pushed in the opposite direction all the time. And it's always, if they're getting you to look over there, then you want to be looking over there as well. Again, it's like a caduceus in a way. You're seeing the good and the bad, the fake and the real. And you still have to decide and weigh up both sides and get the balance to decide what is and what isn't. And then that leads on to how you react or do not react to it. And again, it's the yes and the no is the answer to everything. It's very true. It seems like a contradiction in terms, but I don't even know how to explain it, really. What do they do with all the money? Yes. That's a very interesting question. Some of it, I think, will come down to knowing what actually happens in these great solar minimums. There was the stories of the guy that pulled somebody who had all his fingers cut off in a straight line. He was said to be a contractor who'd stumbled down below ground in something and saw an alien gunfight with Marine, got caught in the crossfire, and then he had this huge, great scar. And he said, "I'd be dead." He said, "I'd be dead for going public with this." The implication from that is that they've had to build tunnels wide enough to take two 747 Boeing aircraft, with space between the wingtips as well. And there's also talk of tunnels. So presumably a lot of it will be to do with the civil engineering. Because as well as having this system, we've obviously got, with this debt slave system, you've got to pay people and then obviously to take it back in taxes. But there's still going to be people who need paying all the way down the line. Some of it will be paying to keep them quiet as bribes. It would probably find that it all balances out. Obviously, there's always a need to hoard more with this insatiable appetite for greed. I mean, for example, if you were a billionaire, and this was something else that was raised, why would you even want to be a politician? Because why would you give yourself a headache? And the other thing to think about as well, if just for example, you got a genuine person elected as a politician, what good do you think they would really do when they are going into Congress or the Houses of Parliament and they can be outvoted by the other three? Certainly, as far as the Agenda 21 and things, though, the more that it can be stalled, the better, the more obstruction. And with the 5G, Lee Garrett, you're doing a wonderful job. I don't know if you're still listening, but everything that slows down this whole mechanism, whether it be false flag, fear, whether there be something more insane behind it with real deaths, the more that can be slowed down, the better. And then that can also be worked twofold, because if the dark side can play the good cop, bad cop, then why can't we? But do it in a different take on that, with not consenting to go along with this criminal law system that is working against us. And I think most of you, in one form or another, must realise by now that there is not one government that is working in anybody's best interest except themselves and whatever they happen to be serving, believing in, or whatever is, again, that is irrelevant at this stage of it. But it's a mixture of the two, working within and without the law. I would encourage, as an opposite of Black's law, is to have a black economy, and you don't even need to do financial. If it can be done in communities and you can come to verbal agreement with somebody in trading goods, there's no need for any money in it, any of it. Or it could be for physical labor, like cutting grass, in exchange for a sack of spuds, potatoes or something. It doesn't matter. Any way that breaks out of this monetary system has got to be a good thing. I have talked for an hour and 20 minutes. Oh my dear. I'm catching up with these comments again. Trying to, sorry. This is the thing, and I'm hearing with the homeschooling. In some ways, that's a good thing, because you've got to teach the children this is the right answer, but this is the answer they want you to give. That can actually probably be turned to advantage if you can get children to see there's an education system and they've got to go through the motions, because we're actors and actresses, we're playing a part. It comes down to what is successful. I mean, if you can carve out a path where you can operate and live and survive without having qualifications, is there any point in going through it? Something else to weigh up. But generally speaking, most people are still in the system, or have to be, because they don't have any other choice. Because the system is geared up to make it as difficult as possible for you to break out from it anyway. And if you do break out from it, you're pretty much on your own. There's even social media. I couldn't be without all my friends on Facebook, and they would cling on to that. I'd like to think that as far as the spiritual side goes, that people are seeing way beyond that and would not. Yes, it would be a shame, but hopefully if more can break out, we can form into communities in the same way as geometric patterns form atomic structure and things. It's all, or cells, It's overlaying circles of interaction between us anyway. Then there is the whole aspect of telepathy and projecting of oneself. Do we even need to move? If we can get it to that level, we can be in two places at once anyway. We've changed reality. There are early signs of that. There are people I talk to who can feel my energy. I can feel their energy. There's this whole unseen world, this whole unseen aspect to it. Yes, shining. Hi, Mystic Mama C. Yeah, I think there is a definite set of rules that have to be followed. Even with the dark side, they have to serve us. But it's what they're serving us is the problem. So they are conforming to this thing. What is being put out? Think of it in terms as pirates and the black spot. If you got the black spot, that means somebody had the intention of killing you. Well, that's what this technology is. Until before you turn it on, when you say "Let there be light" on the screen, it is a black screen. It is a scrying mirror. It is a black spot. It's been sold to you as something good. It's also an Achilles heel because it's allowing things like this to happen where we can communicate with each other and we don't feel so isolated. So it's not all bad. There's some good aspects. Yeah, you have to believe in yourself. That is the thing that holds everybody back. Mostly fear. It's like, if I have a fear of getting in front of this screen, how am I going to communicate? I've got to overcome that fear and get past that. Of course, fear is portrayed in so many different ways. There's physical fear, fear of heights, there's mental fear, there's mental barriers are the worst ones, like with anxiety and not being able to go out the front door. But of course, it's not recognized in the same way, like, say, a sports contest. So, but this is the thing with this positive side, the rewards are there, but they're not ego awards. They're not appealing to that side of us at all. That's the bit we need to kill off within ourselves. I mean, even that thing about thou shalt not kill is not true either, because you need to kill that negative ego side. That even going through this awakening, if you allow it to come to the point where you'll start saying, I am this, I am that, I am the greatest tarot card reader in the world, or whatever, or anything like that, then that's you've lost to the ego. It's another trap. So we've got to remain humble as well in all of this, for definite. Yeah, there's an irony. They tell us that we need to change, but then if you look at the evidence, nothing has changed. All that's happened, even with this prehistory, this dinosaur age, even that seems to be a huge, great cover up of all you've actually really got is smaller versions of what always were. So dinosaurs are basically chickens. I mean, you notice particularly with dinosaurs, they were associated as being reptiles, and now they're more described as being like birds and things. And the whole, it's a huge, great fraud, and it's particularly exciting for children. It's a great way of hooking people in. I mean, basically, these sauropods are probably like giant cattle. It's interesting as well, these giant humans are always still human. Although there's always all the mud flood and the mud fossil aspect to it. Again, how much of that is photoshopped? You need to see all-round pictures of these things, not just one side view where something looks like it could be a face, but then when you see it from another perspective, they're miles away. But there are definitely some strange things in stone as well. And this whole thing with this sculpting sculpting statues and with intricate fishing nets and things. No way is that done with a hammer and chisel. That is a mould for definite. The rock or whatever it is definitely softer. And again, there's a whole question of how old are these things really as well. The things that are on display to the public. It's a huge, great illusion, really, isn't it? I mean, there's a wow factor in how big the whole thing is. And this is also the problem where people are not seeing a big enough picture. But I'm going to end here because it's now nearly an hour and a half, and this has been fun. Thank you so much, all of you that have joined me. That's the trouble when I talk, I shut my eyes so I don't see the comments, so I'm missing out. Yeah. Oh yeah, the transgender thing. See, there's two ways. That again, I think, is a twist. Nicole on television, one of her main topics is talking about the man that speaks for the woman and the woman that speaks for the man. It's a coming together, but not a physically merging into something out of Hollywood, basically. Is there anything normal comes out of Hollywood that isn't an illusion? I start to wonder. And Hollywood seems to extend much further than just film studios. There's Congress, there's Parliament, there's the House of Lords. There's Brian Cox. There was Stephen Hawking. There is Neil deGrasse Tyson. They're all actors and actresses. Some of them not even either. I mean, some of them are called Greta. That's the latest project. Because I cannot get a reading off of that one. That's like trying to meditate and connect with a laptop. It's not happening because it's soulless. Oh, you're welcome, Mystic Mama C. Yeah, because we're coming up to an hour and a half. So I'm sort of partly lost in my own thoughts again about all of this because it is a wonder. But I'll stick my head on the block here. I guarantee you there is far more than 3D reality, and you do all have souls. The death is not the end, it is just a doorway. I'm not saying go out and commit suicide because you'll probably have to come back. There's no shortcuts with this. You can't short circuit. Because if you try and short circuit, that's all you'll do. You'll just blow a fuse. It's snakes and ladders. You're back to square one again. Start again. Your connection is unstable. No, it's come back. Right, now that we've lost the unstable connection warning, I will wish you all a wonderful day and just try and feel yourself, be yourself, become more aware of what your true potential, because it does open up the senses. It does open up far more. I'm talking a completely different language with a lot of people now that they don't understand, and I don't understand them, although it's all allegedly all English, but it's a very different level of language that they're talking that is very superficial, that means nothing to me, so I don't engage with many. So I'm grateful for this outlet to be able to talk to so many of you. Yeah, Greta may well be. That wouldn't surprise me. If that's it. I think when it's saying you've stolen my childhood, it's actually it's part of the original, whatever was the basis of it, coming through and talking. And it's actually directed to someone like Elon Musk. It's not directed to the general public, but they've used that. they've let that one slip through, because it is telling the truth in a very deceptive way, because people will always assume and adopt the thing. So plastics, it's a man-made problem. Well, in some degrees, yes, it is, because you can do something about that part of it. But to accept all these things that are thrust upon us that we don't have any control over, which are run by corporations, why should we accept the responsibility for that? They have caused that. They are fleecing us and robbing from us in the process, in every possible way, financially, morally, spiritually, intellectually, physically. There isn't an aspect of us that they are not feeding off of us, and I don't consent to that, and I refuse to go along with this stupid system any further. Oh, and shut up with those stupid fireworks. God, dear, what is wrong with these people? I'm gonna go and work in a zoo next time and we'll slow. They're a lot more promising than some of them. They've just spent money on setting fire to 10 and 20 pound notes for a superficial, ephemeral joy of a bang and a few glittery lights that are gone in under half a minute. How crazy is that? Oh. But give them something sensible to look at, like how to be the best person they can be and help other people and make this a better world and turn this into something. No, they don't want to know. That is crazy. That really is. Anyway, I did say I was going to go, and I'm still waffling, and that's been another. Oh look, 1:33. Don't make anything out of 33. It's just, that is coincidental. Anyway, I wish you all a wonderful day, and thank you all for listening and taking part as well. I appreciate all these comments and things. Yes, right, I'm going now. Ta-ta for now. And it's not going to close off now. That's typical. It will work in a minute. No. Why won't it turn off? Ah, here we go. Right, ta-ta for now. Finally. This is really going to go slow. Come on.